Hey everyone, my mic was muted. Sorry about that. Hope everything is going well. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about Pwcc for the next, 15, 20 minutes. Then I'm going to bring on my buddy John. We're going to talk about other things. I was planning to do this Sunday night, but my schedule was a bit wacky. So just let's look at some of the comments here. JMF Collectibles says everyone should know that Darren Ravel broke the PWCC sale after watching AIH video beforehand. You don't say. Brendan Ryan says this ought to be interesting. Oh, yes, it should be. Patches. Rahul must be getting to rage. Yeah, I was a little ticked off about the other day, even though I was kind of happy that what my sources stated was correct. Steve Splenda, I'm here for hanky panky and chill bidding. Okay, so a few things I wanted to get into regarding the PWCC situation. Number one, Friday, I was getting information from one of my source regarding PWCC, right? Pissed off customer. So I'm like, okay, this should be really interesting. Okay. And then I was just asking questions, right? People don't like the way that I operate, but I ask questions and people send me information. Some people like Cage Lawyer, they were indirectly talking about me in one of his videos the other day. He seemed a little peeved at the way that I do my channel, right? This is a channel that's not looking for sponsors, by the way. I remember his channel was sponsored, which is fine, but he was indirectly taking jabs at me. Okay. So I wanted to point that out. Number two, I asked questions on Instagram. People were just sending me information left and right based on PWCC. And then all of a sudden, I get a reputable person in the hobby giving me details about how PWCC is basically on the verge of bankruptcy, according to this source. And then on top of it, he was saying that there were basically three competitive bids. One was alt, the other was Fanatics, and also the people at Collectors. Alt wasn't the offer they were looking for, and the guy was leaning towards Fanatics, from my understanding. And then another source DM me saying that the deal is done. It's going to be announced within 48 hours. He wouldn't say who it was. I came to the conclusion it was Fanatics. So I ran with the story based on all the information that I'm hearing, and other people, they got a little peeved at that. And I don't know why. I connect the dots, based on what I gather. So, if people don't like it, then don't watch. If you want to serve your corporate overlords, then go ahead. I report to no one. I ask questions, and this is how I operate my blog. If you don't want to watch, then literally go watch the Soy Boys on YouTube that you like. All right. J Mess says, what grading company is Fanatics going to buy and when? I don't think they're going to buy PSA. I don't think they're going to buy CSG, as Blackstone Group is a part of that. So then there's SGC and BGS. What I think would be kind of interesting is they look at BGS because they have auto authentication and they have that for a while. I would try, if I were Fanatics and have the money, BGS would be on my radar. But we don't know if BGS owners would want to sell, to be honest. HGA is up for sale. It doesn't matter at this point for HGA. It's the big four, I would say. I also heard the principal owners of PWCC are getting a divorce. That's what I heard too. People were DMing me about that. The source that provided me with the information said that the deal was not regarding the divorce. I mean, it is what it is. And the source said that it was regarding the loans that went down. Hello, everyone. Hey, how's it going? Yeah, I mean, This is quite interesting. And the thing is that some people didn't want to give me attribution for this, which is fine, right? They were shouting out other channels, which I've noticed, but it is what it is. I think that in terms of attribution, there needs to be a better job. I used to mess up, right? I've used Pancake Analytics Research, which he's sent me, and I should have shouted him out more in the past. I have recently after Michael from Extrinsic Collections basically said, "Hey, you need to basically give attribution to me when you're using the story." I mean, I put the name there, but yeah, I'm trying to do a better job these days because it's challenging. Sometimes when you have all this information, you kind of mess up there. Why do you need attribution? Well, if they're giving attribution to other channels on YouTube, then I should be given attribution, and especially to my sources. So that's my thought process. If you're going to be like, "Hey, this YouTube channel reported on it, but you're not doing that for mine," why is that? All right, so PWCC, this is very interesting what I see happening. Number one, I saw that they're not going to be liquidating all the cards out there in their vault, which I think is going to temporarily help these high end sports cards. It'll provide a floor, not for every card out there, but for the high demand sports cards. And I'm not talking about the modern ones, I'm talking about more vintage, more um, you could even look at the 80s, not early 90s. Will Fanatics change PWCC due to their bad reputation? I mean, they bought PWCC. They just wanted the infrastructure. I believe that it will be changed to Fanatics in the future, but right now they're just probably going to tread water, in my opinion. The idea of using cards as collateral for loans didn't launch, but there's a reason Fanatics bought PWCC. Maybe they think it can be done better. Remember, Fanatics wants to 10x the hobby. They're not going to 10x the hobby. They are probably going to do a better job than what I thought earlier, but they won't 10x it. I mean, I saw Ken Golden meeting with what's his name the other day. I know it's a different company, but it was Gary V. So Patches says Fanatics bought the platform over the name. I agree 100%. Fanatics overpaid for the 3 big licenses, and collectors will be paying the price next decade with higher sports card prices. Well, did they overpay for the Topps brand? The thing is, I mean, let's just look at it. They paid what? 500 million bucks for it, which was a pretty good deal on Fanatics part. They saw blood and they went with it. And then also they saw blood with PWCC and they went in at it. What are they going to do next? What, Panini? I want to get some individual from the hobby just to get their thought process on this. But that's just fantastic that they're gonna, just looking from a business perspective, buying PWCC, then next Panini. Are they going to go after a grading company? I mean, this is going to be actually good competition between Fanatics and Golden. And I think that's a great idea. I'm so glad that Golden or collectors didn't buy PWCC, because that would be total monopoly land. Now you have 2 companies going at it, to a lesser extent eBay, and then to even a lesser extent Alt. So that's pretty interesting. Patches says Fanatics might 0.75x the hobby at most. I mean, we're going into a recession in the next couple of years, in my opinion. So by the time they acquire all the licenses, I'm going to see what they're going to do. What can they do to increase the participation in the hobby? Sure, you can get deals with LeBron. Sure, you could get some celebrities pumping up the market, and on and on and on. Fanatics paid the Players Union $20.4 million in 2020 for the players' likeness rights, making it the biggest licensing agreement for the MLBPA per Rovell. Okay. And what was the revenue for the MLB or for Topps? I'm just trying to figure out, okay, how much do they make off the MLB cards out there? That would, and I don't think that information's out in the public. They only have older numbers from a couple of years ago, and that's in totality, including all of the cards that they sell. Collector's Dream says Beckett grading is more desirable to Fanatics. They grade modern, and SGC is more vintage. Oh yeah, exactly. And like I said, it's all about the autographs. And if I'm Fanatics, I would be eyeballing Beckett and hoping that Beckett's market share continues to go lower. Yes, they've done collabs with SGC, from my understanding. Yes, they've done collabs with Beckett, from my understanding as well. So who's going to be on the buy list for them? That's what I'm interested in. The likeness contracts also make it so that they have to load products with lower name, current, and retired players. Only way they make money is diluting products that usually were all bigger names. Oh yeah, that's the thing. And that's why, in terms of autographs, I'm getting some autographs now because I don't know how this will be in the future. What if in the future Fanatics grabs a hold of the autograph market and you can only get their autographs, but it will be on Fanatics products only? So that's why, I'm sending autographs through the mail. I'm going to do some private signings. Even though I talked to an autograph expert, a P. Ryan Collection, he said that you could still probably get some autographs. But I do believe there will be a change in that, to be honest. Fanatics is spending a crap load of money, all the money going to leagues, players, associations because of Topps, now PWCC, startup costs for Fanatics Live, and soon they will buy out Panini. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure, for sure. Card companies have a go-around sets with flawless and such as lack a base set. All right, in terms of that. And also, I'm just thinking, I know Neo did a video on what's next for Fanatics. Before I bring my guests on, what do you think is next for Fanatics? I think I'm going to do a video on that in the coming days. I just wanted to think about that. Ruben will go for Fanatics the moment the last drip of blood is about to drip out. He is a very aggressive CEO, but he's still a likable guy. So I just wonder what this dude is going to do next. What's in his mind? Are they going to go target the TCG market? I would not be surprised, to be honest. I mean, they already have the Star Wars brand, but what's next with that? And what influencers are they going to bring along? And they tried it with the Zero Cool brand, and they're giving these products. I got in trouble for saying, hey, look, I believe some of the products are loaded, but I tell you what I think. It's not, I don't have a boss to respond to, unlike what some people want me to say. I don't do that on this channel. I tell you what's going on in my mind. If people don't like it, like I said before, you don't have to watch, right? You could go elsewhere and go to a different channel, right? Alrighty, let's take a look at some other comments before I get my guest on. Card Collector 1991. Hi, what's going on? JMS says Panini baseball in 2023 is totally ruined. Donruss coming out, and they can't print active roster players, so it'll be a set of legacy and minor leagues that won't sell. Yeah, that's why I go for older cards. I don't go for the newer cards, to be honest. I want to sit down and vet Ruben to get a feel of this fella, Don Corleone style sit down. Well, you could look at his Instagram. It's quite interesting, the people he hangs out with. But now we're going to bring on my guest. We're going to change the topic a little bit for tonight, as I wanted to get into this topic actually on Sunday before all this PWCC news came on. And I'm going to bring on my buddy John, who's been on this channel before. And also, he's actually called the bubble in sports cards, and he's not too much into sports cards, but he's very knowledgeable about sports in general. So I wanted to touch base on that. Hey, John, how's it going, man?
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Yep. So I know you're not too much into cards like me, but you tried to send Bob Cousy a letter. What happened when you sent him a card like I did a
Oh,
couple months
uh,
ago?
didn't I? Well, they gave me a note, and basically his descendants. I'll say I don't know if it's kids or grandkids. I'm assuming it's his kids. They said that he could no longer sign anymore since he's 94 years old. So it was well written. So I'm assuming it's his daughter, meaning like the handwriting was really neat.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what happened. I think he would have signed it if he was able to, but he didn't.
Yeah, I mean, the weird part is I sent it a month and a half ago, and Bob Cousy just signed it for me. So it's quite interesting. It's interesting, and he wrote my name on it too. So that's quite interesting. So
Yeah,
anyone out there trying to get their autographs, you should you shouldn't wait. You should just send it out as soon as possible. In my opinion,
I
if you have
hope
the card.
hanky panky with your autograph. It was really
Yeah, I hope it's the real autograph, but I looked at previous signatures of Bob Cousy, and it actually matched the signatures that I saw online. So
yeah.
just as a note, just
That's
as
pretty.
a note.
Thank goodness for that.
Yeah. But speaking of Bob Cousy and the Celtics, you're telling me a lot of information about the 50s and basketball. And you told me this one dude used to guard Russell in the final. What was his name? What was it?
Oh,
Pettit?
Bob Pettit. Yeah. Oh, about Russell in the finals, and they played each other for the championship, and the only two uh, stars to really defeat the Boston Celtics, the Russell Celtics, were Will Chamberlain and his 76ers, and Bob Pettit and his not Atlanta, but St. Louis Hawks. And in game 7 of that finals, Bob Pettit scored 50 on Bill Russell. He lit him up. And he was a power forward, so Russell actually was guarding him directly. He was actually, here's a tidbit about him. He's the only player in the NBA who's played more than 3 seasons who's averaged more than 20 points in all his seasons. Here's the note: Jordan in his last season with the Wizards averaged exactly 20.
There you go. You're dropping stats like that. So why do you think that a lot of people our age haven't heard of this Pettit dude, right? And
I think part of it is the history and the era that he played in. The big rivalry of that era was Russell and Will Chamberlain. And being a 6'9", sort of fundamental, looking like you played in the 50s, a lot of people would dismiss that he can't play today. And I don't even mean today. I mean when I was a child in the 80s and 90s, people would say, "Oh, well, he can't play today." But the reality is if you're scoring 50 on Russell in a game 7, like, you can play. I don't care what. Russell's considered by many the greatest defensive player of all time. I think it's Dennis Rodman. I think it's your Chicago Bulls.
I mean, we
But
have
this is Rodman.
recency bias, though. That's the thing. I mean, I love
Yeah.
watching Rodman play. But speaking of, like, I can't watch that much modern basketball. I am watching the playoffs right now, but just the defense today versus the 90s defense, which I love watching, like you said, Rodman. Rodman used to guard Shaq, with the hand check, but now you can't do that, and that's a foul. I don't know how much basketball you watch these days, but that's just the annoying part that I see with basketball.
I've actually watched the Nuggets because Djokovic is such a unique player. This Djokovic is literally like Shaquille O'Neal and Magic Johnson into one. I've never seen that before in my life. He's worth watching because there might not be a player like him again with his. There's this guy coming out of France who's 7'5", but he's very thin. Like this guy can muscle around.
I mean,
Djokovic.
Giannis was skinny when he first came out, and he bulked up. So this dude from France, I believe, if he bulks up, I think he could be a decent player. It just depends that, if once again, he bulks up. All right, let's take a look at some of the comments here. My buddy Steve, John, he said, "Hey, what's going on, John?"
Hey, what's up, Steve? Was he from that one stream?
Yeah, he's been on multiple streams, and he basically thinks a lot like us, to put it that way.
Yeah, I remember
Tinfoil hat stuff.
I was watching, and they were talking about the NBA players' recovery and all that technology, and I was like, they don't even try most of the time. Why do they need that? Like, maybe it's for the playoffs, but
Yeah, it's probably for the playoffs. They save it for the playoffs. I mean, like LeBron was out for quite some time. Same with AD, and then they came back. They played pretty well until this last series. So it is what it is. Let's take a look at some more comments here. Steve Splenda, pump Joker, pump KD. I know you pump all those things all the time. Is anyone watching this NBA trash? I'm not watching the Heat right now, but I do like Jimmy Buckets, as we used to call him in Chicago.
yeah, Jimmy Butler's a really cool story. Thrown out of his house at age 13. Thrown out of his house at age 13, having to live couch to couch. Up until senior year, a family took him in, and his junior year on the basketball team, he only averaged 10 points a game. So, he was the last pick of the first round. He was a JUCO. He was a 2-star recruit junior year. So, it's nice to see those type of stories in this new era of where they know everything about you and you're pampered.
Yeah, I mean, he had a very challenging life. I mean, Jimmy Butler, even though I like him, I do realize he's a jerk. I don't know if you remember this story when he was with Minnesota, where he basically was complaining for a trade, and he had a lot of attitude, but he was going with the second team on Minnesota, and he still beat the first team. This was when Thibodeau was the coach, and Thibodeau, basically allowed Jimmy Butler to become a better player as well through the system that he ran in Chicago. He was very exciting with the Bulls.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at some of the other comments here. Steve says the Frenchman needs to add weight and is way too slow. Needs about 3 years, not even close to the athlete Giannis is. Elegant Elliott says AIH Proud Boys are here. All right, good to see you. Make sure you stay out of trouble. How are Funkos doing now? I mean, the whole collectibles market has been down now. If it's the ones that are in demand, those, you could still sell for a nice premium, assuming that you bought it when it was dirt cheap.
Oh yeah. Speaking of Funkos, I've purchased some from your store before.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You bought, when you came over, stayed with us pre-pandemic. I know you bought some for my wife, so much
Yeah.
appreciated. Much appreciated.
Yeah.
Steve says, fun fact, Jimmy Butler is the son of Michael Jordan. I've heard those rumors. I haven't looked too much into it. Have not.
He's not the son of Michael Jordan, because if he is, with that
No,
living,
that's insane, man.
if that's true, if that
Right.
true.
Right. Steve says Jimmy is a dog. He wasn't going to deal with those soft ass Timberwolves. Laugh out loud. You had D Rose on that team, and you had a lot of ex Bulls on that team. So, me, being sympathetic towards Thibodeau, I don't think he should have been kicked out, but he didn't get along with the Reinsdorfs and Gar Paxson. Gar's out, but Paxson's still with the Bulls right now.
Yeah, it will be a fun finals, especially when the Heat, well, based on what I see, sweep the Celtics.
Right.
In seeing the Heat play the Nuggets. Both teams are super hot. So,
Yeah, I think I may cheer for the Heat as Jimmy Butler was from the Bulls or played with the Bulls. That's how I see it. All
yeah.
right, let's take a look at a few other comments, then we'll get into the next topic. T-Law cards are going up, my friends. All right, yeah, I think he'll be a decent quarterback.
Wait, who's T-Log?
Trevor Lawrence, that's what they call him.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right, Nito Funko Pop of Diana Ross and Michael Jackson. For sure, for sure.
Michael Jackson and
What?
Diana.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen the videos on YouTube. I'll tell you more about it another time.
I probably have. I just
What Diana Ross is the son of Smokey Robinson and
oh
whatever.
nah.
Diana Ross. So those are the rumors. Living with the LT says, "Sup, Rahul? What's up, man?" He says, "What's up, John?"
What's up, LT? Pat Riley let Jimmy pick
his teammates. I haven't looked too much into all of that, to be honest. Like, I'm surprised Pat Riley is still with the Heat.
Well, he's an executive role, so he's not
He's executive. Yeah, he coached that one finals, I believe. That was with Shaq and D Wave, and that was over 20 years ago.
Oh my
I
gosh,
remember correctly.
coach because he wanted to get a ring for himself without Magic and Kareem. That's just
is that what it is?
I can't confirm that through like stories, but they got hot, and then Stan Van Gundy got fired, and I was like, yeah, Riley wants a ring without Magic and Kareem. So that was that's what I think happened. But I mean, I don't know what type of person he is, but you got to give it to him. The Heat have really turned into a really consummate franchise, meaning they win consistently.
Yeah, for sure. And that signing of Jimmy Butler was pretty fantastic. I hope the Bulls kept him, but he was a jerk from my understanding, and they didn't want to deal with him. I was actually pissed. They did get Levine through that trade though, so he's decent.
Well, speaking of playoffs, the NHL playoffs, I'm pulling for the what was that Vegas team, the Knights, because they have the guy who basically built the Stanley Cup champs for the Capitals. He runs Vegas, and that's why they're so good. The Capitals fired him because he didn't win the cup fast enough, and now the Capitals don't make the playoffs, haven't drafted well, so they hopefully they regret firing him. But
Right.
but the Vegas Knights still, as long as they keep him, he's not officially the GM, but he stepped down to give the title, but he's basically the head of the front office. That's why I told you in like the text he's the head of the front office, but they'll be good for a while.
Speaking of the Capitals, sorry to interrupt, but Ovechkin, I wonder if I should look into Ovechkin cards. And I remember you told me in March of 2020 or as May of 2020, I asked you like, "Hey, I'm looking at sports cards. You have any suggestions for different sports, like unique sports?" And then you told me Ovechkin, and you bought some Ovechkin cards. I wish I bought more and spent a ton because his cards went up like crazy. What's the outlook of you? I mean, you're the hockey guy out there, so what do you think about Ovechkin? Do you think that he still has decent growth in terms of his career, or is he just too old?
Still, he's one of the top goal scorers in the league. People forget Chara. He played till he was 45. So I think because hockey, they only play a third of the time in games. I think their shelf life is longer than like basketball, especially football. Hockey's not as physical as in football. I mean, obviously, football is the most physical sport, but in hockey, you go on 2 to 3 minutes at a time in the ice, and then you rest. And Ovechkin's minutes is 20 minutes, so. And he also redefined his game. Early in his career, he didn't play defense, so he was actually resting a lot because paid 20 minutes and then half the time he doesn't play because he never played D. But he used to, my uncle was asking me about this, and he was like, yeah, he used to deke a lot and basically, I guess, the basketball equivalent to driving. But then he redefined his game where he just sits out 15 feet away from the goal, or maybe 10 to 15 feet. And since he has a 100-mile-an-hour slap shot, he just waits for a pass and just hits it in. So he can play for a lot longer because he doesn't really use much of his speed. He's a big, strong, physical guy. So, and if he can find a way to get his, if the caps are good, or if he breaks the record and then it's traded to a contender, he could possibly get another Stanley Cup. But it's very well possible, not this upcoming season or next season, but the season after, he breaks Gretzky's record. And then he could go to 900 because Gretzky, if he breaks Gretzky's record, which is 894 goals, he's only 6 away from 900, and he'll be the sole NHL player in 900 goals.
Yeah, that'd be very interesting when that happens. I just wonder in terms of his card prices, will that materialize? Because right now, a lot of people, no one's talking about Ovechkin now, and everyone's talking about the dude that the Blackhawks are going to draft, and Bedard. So, I mean, what, based on your research of this dude, I know that this dude is getting hyped up like crazy, but what do you know about this dude for people that don't watch hockey or follow hockey?
Very smart guy. He was the best amateur since he was 14. I would say he has to put on a little weight. He's 170 pounds, but for a center, that's not really that small. Great two-way player, very high IQ hockey player. And he can attack and defend. I mean, great puck handling skills, great leadership. And playing at 14, he knows how to play against bigger, stronger dudes. And so, yeah, that's just basically in a nutshell. I haven't seen him play too much because I just heard about him 2 months ago. But I looked at what he did as an amateur. The hype's real. He basically was 15, 16. What he did was the equivalent of a high school guy playing at the collegiate basketball level.
Yeah, so I hope, me living in Chicago, I know you said that you want to come to Chicago just to see this dude, and I think I'm going to have to go to a Blackhawks game. I haven't gone, since 2006, so I think I think we're going to go see a game, but then it was, the pandemic that happened in DC? Yeah, I was
Really
about to fly
happened
over, and then I canceled my flight.
the week of, or the
Yeah.
week before. So, yeah, we had to cancel at the last minute because we had no idea. One thing, we had no idea if you could get back.
Yeah,
And then we didn't know if you could get back because they were canceling flights left and right.
Yeah, I thought there would be an inter-commerce ban or interstate ban where you can travel unless, you're a necessary employee or whatever. And I'm like, dude, I'm not going to travel. I'm going to be stuck at John's house.
Yeah, you would have had and if you really wanted to get back, you would have had to rent a car for.
Yeah, exactly. What an exorbitant amount to get back. But yeah, that was some wild times at that time. And yeah, I think you were at Costco that weekend, the weekend we're supposed to hang out. So was everyone else.
The other thing about gosh, I'm forgetting his name, but he's also a center. And the thing about hockey is the center is like your quarterback on offense and your free safety on defense. So it's close. Having a great center is almost the equivalent of having a great quarterback. So that's the really. And if you don't agree with me, I would say Ovi's a better wing than Sidney Crosby is a center. But Ovi has 1 title, Sidney has 3. Now hockey, they don't dictate the games as the quarterback does, but you can just look at that, and having a great center is such an advantage. It is, yeah, it's basically it's almost like having a great quarterback.
Yeah, for sure. And I did buy a Bedard rookie. There's quite a bit out there. I want to try to get it signed now. Maybe I have to go to a private signing. I don't know. Did you buy a rookie of his? I know we were texting the other day.
No, I ended up not because everything was like $100.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's hyped up, so I just bought one just because, and yeah, it may go down later on during the off season, and then
Cards will have pronouns soon.
yeah, that's what LT. I think I saw that comment. Where did he say that? He said it way up. Yeah, cards will soon have pronouns. Who knows at this rate?
That's gonna be the big. That's gonna be the new PSA 10.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. But now I wanted to segue into a different type of topic that no one really dives into, but I found it interesting. You always text me about this, and it's actually, now some people will say this is negative, but in my opinion, this is actually the truth. And it is that you've noticed that there's been the downfall of the American athlete. Explain what you mean about that.
Oh yeah, basically that America is no longer dominant in sports at all. And that's basically we don't produce the world's best athletes anymore. And growing up as a kid, we produced the world's best athletes across the board. And the arguments I hear is like games are becoming more globalized and becoming international. If you really dig down deep, none of those arguments hold up at all. For example, if you look at basketball, the best players are foreign now. They aren't American anymore. And if I think there's a lot of reasons, and I'm glad we brought up Jimmy Butler. Is I think one of the reasons Jimmy Butler is doing the best out of the American players is he didn't have it easy growing up. I think one of the reasons they're falling is that these athletes are treated like gods from a young age at 9 years old, while in
But
foreign.
let me interrupt you for that. I mean, there are
Yeah.
many athletes that grow up in tough neighborhoods. So what's the difference?
Oh well, they're treated like Jimmy Butler averaged 10 points a game in his junior year of high school. They're treated because they're great at the sport. They're treated like gods in their school system, even though it's a tough neighborhood. A lot of the people in the neighborhood look out for them, so they're still sheltered. Even the rough gang members, they don't want to screw that kid's future up because he can get out. So it is sort of and the school systems, they shelter them. Uh, so
So let me say this comment. JMF Collectibles says we still have the best swimmers. Right? Would you agree with that?
yeah, based on what I see, but I mean, I'm talking about like the NBA, MLB, uh, NBA, NHL, and like one example of like basketball being the best foreigners. A lot of people say the game's gone more global. Well, same thing with hockey, but the NHL is still mostly Canadian. A lot of the best players are still Canadian. Like Sidney Crosby was the best player. Now we have Bertrand, Connor.
McDavid.
McDavid is the best player now. So
Bedard's from Canada too, right?
yeah, Bedard, yeah, that's who it is from Canada.
So
So
it's Canadians and Eastern Europeans.
yeah, but the majority of the best players are still Canadian. You would never see the top three players in the NBA are foreign. Djokovic, Embiid, and I forget who the
Giannis, right?
yeah, yeah, those are the top three players. The Greek Freak, and then for the top five scorers in the NBA are foreign. You would never see that in hockey. So the whole notion that, and not only that, when Gretzky was traded, this was actually ESPN admitted, so this isn't a conspiracy. From the Oilers to the Kings, one of the reasons they did that is they wanted to grow the sport in America because Americans didn't play hockey much. So they thought if they bring Gretzky down, and America from the 1990s has produced a lot more hockey players, and the sport's grown significantly from there. So the whole notion, like the argument we get that that the game's just growing. The same things happen with hockey, but Canada's still, population decline. Canada's declining in population. That's still, it doesn't hold up because Canada's still producing the majority of the best hockey players in the NHL. So, and not only that, in Canada, due to the Cold War, Russia and Eastern Europe weren't even allowed to play. Now they're allowed to play. So you have basically a whole region of the world coming into this sport that you didn't have with basketball. But Canada's still the best at hockey, meaning they people born and raised in Canada still make up the majority of the NHL.
Yeah.
So that argument that like a lot of these games are going global just don't hold weight. And another one is the World Baseball Classic. Japan only had 5 MLB players, and they still beat America. They had Otani, but one of them, I think, joined. You pointed that out to me, but he probably joined because he couldn't make
the U.S. team. It was an American guy from St. Louis Cardinals. I was watching a game on ESPN. I think it was some other team they're playing in the NL. And they said this dude he went to school in Japan for a semester or two. So that's how he got on. But besides that, I mean, like you said, there weren't that many MLB players on the Japanese team.
No, there wasn't. There was only 5. So at minimum, or maximum, well, at minimum, 4 non-MLB players were starting, and Shohei Otani was a reliever. So the starting pitcher for that game may have been MLB. I don't know exactly, but yeah, 4 non-MLB players, and generally you don't play every game. So
I mean, he struck out Trout, so
yeah.
the best of both countries.
Yeah, so that was pretty. And yeah, you see it with the MLB. A lot of the best players are foreign now, and I think right now it's 70% American, but it was a lot higher than that. So yeah, if you look at it, basketball, baseball. I was thinking of the other one. Well, hockey we've always been, but yeah, the U.S. is not filling up our sports anymore. And a lot of people also argue, well, we play football, but in Europe, the top sport's soccer. And even in Britain and a lot of other sports, France, rugby's huge. So they have their sports that Americans don't play that are very popular too. So like all the arguments you hear just don't hold up.
Yeah. Good points. Good points. You're going to like this comment. Steve says, Alex Jones, they put stuff in water to turn the frogs gay and make American athletes soft now.
Yeah. Well, if you look at the Nuggets too, the best 2 players, one's Canadian and the other is Djokovic. I don't know what country he's from, but I know he's Eastern European.
Yeah.
So if you just look at it, a lot of the best players, the number 1 pick in the draft is going to be from France this year. Not only that, I planned this out on my sports channel. The top player, Final Four MVP, he was foreign, and the National Collegiate Player of the Year was from. So even in our own amateur leagues, we're not producing the best players.
Yeah, for sure. Collector's Dream says LeBron was like a god in high school. Yeah, there was so much media attention. He was hyped up to the moon. And he lived up to the hype, no doubt about that. Whether people like him or not, I mean, he delivered 4 rings for now.
I'm not a fan of LeBron per se, but like going back to soft, like LeBron isn't soft, in my opinion. So yeah, I think there's a lot of different things that are, but I also think coaching is bad. I think we don't let kids develop. A lot of kids are told from like 11 or 10 what sport they have to do. The National Player of the Year from Iowa, I forget his name, but he didn't really commit to basketball until he was 15 or 16 when he realized he was going to be really tall. So I think part of that is, and then not only that, just the coaching. And it's not just like these sports. Like look at boxing. Boxing is now the best 2 fighters are foreign. One's from, I forget the name, but from Ukraine. And then there's obviously Tyson Fury. And they're both undefeated. So I actually hope they do fight. And it's not just that. If you look back, the top fighters post Lennox Lewis, even Lennox Lewis, because he was from Britain, but Lennox Lewis on. They were Lennox Lewis, who was fighting out of Britain, and then all of them were Eastern European after that. The top fighters, the Klitschko brothers, mainly from Ukraine. So
You make it. Go ahead.
and the UFC, now we have an American heavyweight champ for a change, but before that, most of the champs were from like South America or Africa. We rarely had American champs in every weight class. So
Yeah, I mean, there's John Jones, but he allegedly used roids, but a lot of them allegedly use roids out there, just to point that out. But you make an interesting point about Jimmy Butler having a challenging childhood. Mayweather is undefeated, and he had a challenging childhood, from my understanding. And, he delivered. He was phenomenal. Now he's retired. But like you said, do you think that these guys, they're just coddled too much, and that's why you don't see the mental toughness out there? I mean, I see the mental toughness in Jimmy Butler, regardless of whether people think he's a jerk or not. Mayweather, I saw it in him as well.
I think that's part of the reason. I definitely think that's one of the reasons is, people, America puts their athletes on pedestals. So this is sort of like the inequality in a sense, where if you look at the younger generation, they have it a lot rougher. But the people who are talented and high valued, they've had it a lot easier than the generations where you were more talented. Because even though you were talented, you had to prove it. You had to put up the stats. They did not just train you right away. Right. And like, for example, Will Chamberlain was a bellboy growing up in high school. Now, he did get the job because he was tall and they didn't want to have to go up the stairs. So he would actually, there was a YouTube clip of him literally taking luggage and putting it into the second floor, giving to, but how many high school athletes that are like of that caliber work during the summers? Probably not many. They probably have their college recruiting boosters slipping them checks, so they work out and not have to focus. So, and then with schools, they don't have to face failure. They'll make sure they pass because of academic eligibility. I think part of it's also just coaching. I think coaching overseas is better. Like someone where I did martial arts, I was trained by a foreigner, and then I recently did some with American coaches, and the American coaches were all about offense. And when I used to do martial arts with foreigners, it was all about defense fundamentals. It was about learning the basics first and pounding down the basics. It wasn't fancy moves right off the bat. So I think there's a lot of coaching differences. I think coaching is better. But yeah, I think background is better. Is that going back to the whole, and I think this is why Jimmy Butler is the sole American, is he grew up in a tough situation. And so he has that mental toughness in very tough situations. And you don't really see that with the Boston Celtics as an example. Their team's mostly American, but they're getting eliminated. They lose twice and they're just out. They've never been in a situation where they could fail and no one's there to catch them and they have to catch themselves.
Right. All right, the last topic I want to dive into, getting back into basketball. 90s basketball was one of my favorites, and I'm pretty sure you liked it as well, as you played it in high school. And it was regarding Michael Jordan. I think you talked about it in one podcast I brought you on here a while back. It was MJ, it was Pippen, it was Rodman, it was Jackson. And you said that it was Jackson that allowed Michael Jordan to flourish because, I was looking at the 90s team. Before it was Doug Collins, and it was just a one-man show with MJ. So just explain, about all that.
Well, yeah, he did his offense, but in his triangle philosophy, he had a philosophy of teammates sharing. Basically, to put it in a nutshell, in the CBA, he demanded all players were equally because he said everyone's important as the other. And when Phil Jackson came to the NBA, he's like, well, that can't happen. It's just not going to happen. And so Phil Jackson was very pragmatic. And then one example was with John Paxson, where he could shoot, and Jordan wouldn't pass him the ball for a while, and Phil Jackson had the chutzpah to, say, pass the ball, trust your teammates. And he designed a triangle offense, so you couldn't double team Jordan, but it would only work if Jordan would. And B.J. Armstrong, during Jordan's third championship, he led the league in 3-point percentage. And so, but Phil Jackson was able to confront Jordan or sell Jordan on the idea that he has to share the ball. He cannot be a one-man show. And that's in a nutshell. And the other one is Jordan rode people very hard. But one example is the Steve Kerr fight. Phil Jackson told Jordan to call him and apologize. And Phil Jackson knew two things. One, that Steve Kerr would have been broken if Jordan didn't apologize, because Steve Kerr was not at fault. But number two, he didn't want to, hurt Jordan's, ego. He didn't want to have Jordan apologize. He knew Jordan had a lot of pride. And so he told him to call him after practice. And that way he, enabled Jordan to admit he was wrong without having to really, do it in front of the team where everyone else would be like, yeah, you do this all the time or whatnot, or pile on. And then Jordan would just get more mad. He knew what had to be done and how to do it. And he knew when to unleash Jordan's, ruthlessness on a player. And he also knew when to pull it back. And Jordan respected him enough to let him pull it back. And I personally think that's one reason he was a failure with the Wizards, was he didn't have a Phil Jackson that could really pull it back.
And that's why I think he was wrong in bullying Kwame Brown. And I think, Kwame Brown may have been a better player if, unfortunately, Jordan wasn't on that team. But,
had someone like Phil to be like, you're going too far.
You're going too far, and then Jordan would have stopped. And, what's quite interesting, till this day, Scottie Pippen, it's always like, oh, I love Michael Jordan, then he doesn't like Michael Jordan. I don't think they're talking anymore. And I think that's why Scottie Pippen didn't go to that anniversary game. It was last year, I think, at the All-Star game. And I just find it quite interesting that Jordan brought the best out of Pippen, in my opinion. But then I still think that Pippen was treated poorly. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons Pippen did what he did is, I think there is some truth, is like during the Trailblazers championship, they made a huge comeback with Jordan on the bench. I forget how much, but they were down by like 20 or 30. I don't know the number. And Jordan got on the bench. And I remember thinking, this is over. They don't have Jordan in. And Jordan did have a lot of like really good teammates around him. But going back, I think the team was big, but I think Pippen, the way he rode Pippen, and always they used to argue about Jordan used to argue about him, like which kid had bigger, down there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think at some point you just wanted to hit him, but you're not going to hit Jordan. So, yeah, I think a lot of that was also just years of built-in resentment. And it did, it did teach Pippen a lot, because when Pippen went to the Houston Rockets, after a year, he's like, Barkley doesn't have what it takes to win a championship. And so Pippen sort of, and Jordan, yeah, he pushed him to be that tough. And that prepared, and he did that because when Jordan first started out, there was teams like the Bad Boy Pistons. They would knock you to the ground. They would hurt you. And that's what Jordan was preparing for. And I think that's one reason Jordan dominated also the mid-90s when he came back, is you had Rodman, who was great at that psychological terror. And then you had Jordan and Pippen, who had to grow up through that, but a lot of those players in the late 90s, they didn't have to go through it. And I think that's one reason they were able to easily just slice through the regular season. Is Magic, Isaiah, a lot of those people who were that tough, they were gone. They weren't there anymore. And Hakeem Olajuwon, he was getting old. He wasn't as good anymore. Barkley wasn't as good anymore. Actually, here's a fun fact: the only player Jordan feared in the '90s was Hakeem Olajuwon.
Interesting.
And that's what Jordan admitted. Jordan admitted that publicly. He said the only player I ever feared was Hakeem Olajuwon. So, in fact, Olajuwon was so scary when they asked about who would have won the Rockets or the Bulls. No one wants to answer that question in the NBA because they don't want to disrespect Hakeem or disrespect Jordan. They're like, this is like pick your poison.
Yeah, I don't think the Bulls would have beaten the Rockets when they won, after MJ retired, because they lost Horace Grant through free agency. So I think that would have played a role in it.
I think the Bulls would have lost at least once. I don't know if they would have lost both times because they had Horace Grant the first time, and a lot of people are like, Horace Grant on Hakeem Olajuwon. That's not what it is. It's on the boards. I think the second time, I was even looking at when they lost to the Magic the second time, and when they lost to the Magic, Jordan had like 30 or 40 points. I remember looking at those games. The stat, I was actually surprised because I remember going off memory, Jordan being, slow and out of shape. But yeah, that wasn't the case in that series. He actually played very well. And Shaq didn't really dominate. He had like 20, 25. But where they really got hurt was the boards. And that's where you had Otis Thorpe, who is the power forward of the Rockets, and then Hakeem Olajuwon, and against Bill Cartwright, and there was some guy I've never even heard of. If you go look at the starters, you'll see who it is. He wasn't even on the team the next year, and I think personally the Bulls, they would have even if Jordan was better. I think they would have lost to the Rockets on the boards. Now, the first year is very tough because if you look at common opponents, the Jordan Bulls, they lost to the Knicks in 7. Yeah. Jordan's second championship, but his third, it was by 6. And what gave them problems was Patrick Ewing and his length. And then you got the Suns, who Jordan Bulls, they beat them in 6, but the next year, the Rockets beat them in 7, but Hakeem Olajuwon was just unstoppable. They would have had to double and triple him with his size, athletic ability, and Jordan never would have faced a shot blocker or defender like Olajuwon. So I think that would have gone to 7, but who wins? I think with Horace Grant, he would out rebound. He would beat Otis Thorpe on the boards, but Olajuwon. So it would be very. They did have Vernon Maxwell, who was a really good defender to slow Jordan down.
Right.
That's what I think. I forget whose argument, Kenny Smith's argument was. He said that we have people who can slow Jordan down, but we have. They don't have anyone that could slow Hakeem down. But I think it would have been tough. If I had to pick, I would pick the Bulls in 7 for the first one, but the Rockets would have pulled it out in the second one.
Yeah, I think it probably be split. I think that's a good observation. And like a couple other things before we wrap this up. And it's just quite interesting that now Scottie Pippen's ex-wife is now dating MJ's son. So
Yeah.
I just find it quite interesting. I think that could be the source of the rage as well from Pippen.
Yeah, could be it. Yeah, he could feel like it's a backstabber, like my ex-wife, and now your son.
Yeah,
maybe Pippen did. Maybe Jordan ordered his son as a revenge.
Revenge, the Jordan rules.
Jordan's that competitive. He's like,
Yeah.
how dare Pippen talk to me like that?
Yeah, he talks smack about him during the documentary, and then all of a sudden you see his son dating Pippen's ex-wife. That's like, wow, man. Are they engaged?
I have no idea. Maybe the Madonna comments hurt Jordan, and he wanted his last say.
Last revenge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One last thing I wanted to talk about the Bulls. So I think you told me that one book to read Phil Jackson wrote. And in that book, today I think Phil Jackson would have been canceled. But it was basically he told the players to, this is basically in the book, you could check it out, to like grunt like your animals or monkeys. And just imagine if you do that in today's society. He'd be gone.
Yeah. I wonder, like, players are accusing him of being racist.
I mean, Pippen was accusing him of that, right?
Yeah, I wonder if that's like...
That's it, but they're not publicly saying it.
Yeah.
Because he said, well, Tony Kukoc took that shot against the Knicks. I don't know if you remember that in the playoffs.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So I wonder if that's it.
That, because Pippen acted the way he did, most people don't know this, but I forget what YouTube video I was reading or listening to, but one game against the Jazz, Jordan was really cold and Kukoc was really hot. I think it was a game 5. I forget which year. I think it was the first time they played the Jazz, and the assistant coach was going to draw up the play for Kukoc, and Phil Jackson went, no, I do not want, Jordan will not react well to this.
Yeah, for sure. Before I let you go, John, where can people find your work? I know you do a few blogs, I believe, on YouTube. You always send them to me, and I watch when I can.
Yeah, I was going to say J22 report. That should be my profile, but yeah, J22 report or J22 sports report. And I haven't done the sports videos lately. Because of like personal situations, the last week and two, I haven't done videos. So next week, I still have those to deal with, but next week I want to start doing more. But that's mainly on markets and metal, precious metals and whatnot. So if you're just into sports, though, J22 Sports Report, and I plan on doing videos there eventually, but you'll be subscribed if you go there. So you'll eventually see my videos when I decide to do them. But if you're into finance or the markets, J22 Report, you can go there, and I do a lot of different things. And one of the reasons I'll just say I am doing my J22 report is there's so much disinformation about gold and precious metals and what drives it. And that was my main thing, is I wanted to provide a good fundamentals channel so people can actually make sense of those markets. So
Yep. Make sure to follow John there. He has some good information. And thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you later, guys and gals. See you.
for having me.